Good evening and welcome to the Making Sense Project November 13th, 2014 webinar. Our agenda this evening includes an overview of the webinar along with presentations by Regis Bodnar about the Understanding Taxes program and myself, Hilary Hunt, about the Earning Income module of our new model curriculum, as well as some professional and additional information that I'll be sharing, including some information from the H&R Block's new Budget Challenge program. And then finally, a quick wrap up at the end. The Making Sense webinars are a partnership between the Pennsylvania Department of Education and Penn State University. They're also part of a series of financial literacy and economic education initiatives. You can see our website shown there with the webinars tab. You'll be hearing more about the curriculum work that we've been doing. You can access research and statistics on financial literacy and economic education, as well as sign up for our e-blasts, all from this website. And I encourage you to do all of those things. Each of our programs, we try and approach it from three different perspectives. One, we want to provide curriculum resources. We're going to do a lot of that today. We're also going to provide you with some content knowledge with some of what Regis is talking about in the Understanding Taxes section, and then some professional information. I'll be sharing quite a bit of information with you on that front as well. This program wouldn't be possible without our partners at the Department of Education and Penn State University. Thank you very much to Sally Flaherty and Dr. Kathy Bowen for the role that each of you play in making these programs a success. And with that, I'd like to introduce our first presenter, or other presenter for this evening. Regis Bodnar with the IRS is joining us to talk today about the Understanding Taxes program and resources available from the IRS to help you teach about taxes with your students. So Regis, I am turning things over to you. I can hear your mic, so they're all yours.
Okay, good evening, and we welcome everybody to this part of the webinar, and I'm going to share my screen with you. First of all, I'd like to say it's a pleasure to have this opportunity to review the Understanding Taxes program with you. Thanks to Hilary Hunt, Penn State University, and the PA Department of Education. First thing I'm going to do is show a brief PowerPoint. And can everybody see my screen?
It's looking good.
Okay. And we're going to talk about understanding taxes. And there is a direct link on this PowerPoint slide for reaching the application, but there is another way to reach it, which I'll show you shortly. Understanding taxes is a quick and simple way for students to learn to understand the tax system. As you know, as people grow older and become employed, taxes becomes a part of their life. And it's great to have a program to help students understand this, and this is a ready-made program for teachers to use to instruct students. So the online version of Understanding Taxes includes detailed lesson plans, their interactive activities, simulations, and more. And the website also lists correlations to national and state educational standards. The lesson plans have a link to applicable national and state standards, making it simple to understand taxes into your existing classroom curricula. And just a note about Understanding Taxes, currently it is online. There is a time period in December. We don't know the exact date yet, but sometime in December they kind of like do a refresher and update things. So the site is active now, but sometime in December it may go down for a weekend or a couple of days. When I started thinking about how I wanted to present this, I try to look at it from a student's perspective, and there's this thing about taxes, and it's like, why do we have to pay taxes? Well, The government provides public goods and services for the community as a whole. And of course, to pay its bills, government needs money, which we call revenue, or a source of income. The money the federal government uses to pay its bills comes mostly from taxes. And by taxing people, they're actually shifting resources from private individuals and businesses to the government. And what do my taxes pay for, a young person might say? Well, when you wake up in the morning, you're in one of the greatest countries in the world. While you were sleeping, the United States military was protecting our country. Your local police were protecting your city or your town. When you get out of bed and you turn on the light and turn on the water to shower, the Public Utility Commission has ensured safe and affordable utilities. And when you sit down to eat your breakfast, the food you eat is kept safe by the Department of Agriculture. When you're being transported to school, you're riding on roads that the government has built and your taxes maintains. The very bus you ride on is maintained and inspected by the Department of Transportation. And when you arrive at school, the schools are built and maintained by federal, state, and local taxes. So you might ask students, teachers, what other things are paid for by my taxes? All you have to do is look around, take your daily activities, and it's amazing how many things that touch on your lives that are provided by taxes. You might ask, where did this idea of taxes come from? Well, truthfully, taxes have been around for, thousands of years. Going back to the early Greeks and the Romans, somebody had to pay for the government, somebody had to pay for the armies, and so on. In American history, since our earliest days, if you recall in history, the Revolutionary War, there was a thing about taxation without representation. In other words, the colonists were being taxed, I guess, quite strongly, but they had no say in the matter. They had no representation. So actually, taxes were part of the original Revolutionary War, you might say. And when the Constitution was being written by our founding fathers, they realized that there would be needs for income to the government for building roads and defending the country. So there were provisions put in the Constitution that spelled out exactly how legislation process would evolve into taxation authority. As a taxpayer, you have to understand our tax system is somewhat unique in the world. Obviously, there are other countries like ours, though, but our system is based on the idea of voluntary compliance. What that means is it's every taxpayer's responsibility to report all their income. Of course, we know people do evade taxes, and that's illegal. They hide money offshore. They have all these different scams and schemes to keep from paying their fair share of taxes. And of course, when people fail to pay their taxes, the IRS can collect back taxes and assess penalties. And, as we well know, there are people go to jail because of non-payment of taxes. As a taxpayer, though, you do have rights. The fundamental right about our tax system is its confidentiality. All taxpayers have a right to privacy of their tax information, and only authorized tax personnel can examine or audit a tax return. I work for the IRS. I cannot look up anybody's tax information. I don't have access to that system. I'm kind of in a unique job with the IRS. We do education and outreach. So my position has no access to anybody's tax records. Even law enforcement agencies have no right to examine a suspect's tax returns. In addition, taxpayers can appeal any IRS decision on their tax return, and a taxpayer is always able to contest any tax liability in court, or they could go to the IRS appeals office and ask for a review of their case. So you might think of your students as going out and getting their first job. And okay, I got my first job now. How do I pay my taxes? Well, again, we say, when you earn money, it's your responsibility to pay taxes. But when you're working for an employer, federal income taxes as well as state income taxes are most often collected on a pay-as-you-go basis. That means every paycheck, part of your pay is going to be taken out for federal income tax. There are taxes for Medicare, taxes for Social Security. The state's going to take 3.07 out. And in most cases, the local tax, which is generally 1 to 2%, is going to come out. So again, it's a pay-as-you-go across the board between federal, state, and local taxes. And employees have their tax taken out from every paycheck based on what income is subject to tax. And one thing, and you'll see it when we get into the understanding taxes part, when you're first hired by an employer, you meet your first tax form. It's called a W-4. And this helps the employer decide how much tax to withhold from a person's wages. And your student might say, okay, well, I've worked all year. Now, what do I got to do about a tax return? There are different ways of doing the tax return. You can get the old paper form, fill it out, and hope you did it right, and mail it to the IRS. Or better yet, you can prepare and file it electronically by computer. The big thing about electronic filing is, number one, it's very accurate because you're putting, as you put amounts on the return, the calculations are done by the software. So you don't have addition and subtraction errors and so forth. And the nice benefit about filing electronically, you generally can file your federal and your state returns simultaneously. Another benefit when you file it electronically, after it's transmitted, you get an acknowledgement that the IRS has received and accepted your tax return, or if there was something wrong with it, if it was rejected for some reason, your message will tell you that, and therefore you can correct it within a matter of hours and get it back in the system. Now, versus filing with paper, when you put that envelope in the mailbox, you don't have the slightest idea where it went from there. There are a lot of cases where things get lost or destroyed in the mail. They're dropped at the wrong address. They got stuck in the bottom of the mailbox. Myriads of things can happen, and you will never know until maybe you're waiting for a refund, and months go by, and then maybe finally you check up and call the IRS and say, we never got your tax return. So it's much better to file it electronically. Of course, there is a third option. You can have someone else do it for you. And there are tax professionals, including CPAs, enrolled agents with the IRS. We all know about the businesses that are out there, the H&R Blocks, the Jackson Hewitts, the Liberty Tax Service. But there's also another thing out there that'll do your tax return for you. It's called a VITA site. And all of these professional people are going to charge you a fee based on the service provided, except the VITA site prepares returns at no charge. So you say, okay, what is a VITA site? I never heard of it. Well, VITA stands for Volunteer Income Tax Assistance. VITA volunteers are people that volunteer, they're trained, and they complete certification testing based on IRS tests. And then they are approved to prepare tax returns for generally low-income, elderly, disabled, and non-English speaking taxpayers whose income falls below $53,000. That's the way the number they're using this year for how a low-income person is classified. So the students say, well, great, I made $3,900 working at McDonald's. I guess I qualify, and you do. So how can you find a VITA site? You can go on the internet. There is a link, or you can also call 800-906-9887. And it's I haven't used it for years, but I think it's all automated. You would just put in your zip code, and you'll get back a voice message that will tell you where the nearest site is based on your zip code. That's about all we're going to do with the PowerPoint. Now we're actually going to look at how we get to this Understanding Taxes site, and I'm going through a series of things here. Okay, when you the best way to get to it, if you don't know the direct link, if you go to the IRS website, and it's just www.irs.gov, and you'll get a search box, and you type in Understanding Taxes, and if you click on Understanding Taxes, it brings you to this site, and this is where we're going to spend the rest of my time here tonight, looking over this site. And if you look at it, it tells you right, in very colorful, with the apple for the teacher site, and there's a student site. So it's a two-part site. And the teacher site is basically geared to middle school, high school, or community college classrooms. And if we look at the teacher site, it brings up a toolbar at the top, like virtually every other site you go to. There's always toolbars at the top, so it's interesting to discover what's there. And there is a custom resource list there, and you can customize things like this one module is telling you payroll taxes and federal income withholding, but you can customize it. The next part of this toolbar talks about the educational standards, and there are educational standards set up nationally and by state. If we look on here at Pennsylvania, they basically have the standards for different applications for such a class such as Understanding Taxes. In other words, if you're looking to add it in as part of history or social studies, it basically tells you the whys of taxes, the themes you want to follow. You're looking at taxes in U.S. history, evolution of taxes in the Constitution, early tax issues. You might want to remember the Whiskey Rebellion. That was all about taxes, and so on. Then you could talk about the whys of taxes. And if we go down further in the site, there is a part of the program applies to civics and government classes. There is a part that talks about how government work, and it specifically talks about Pennsylvania public schools shall teach, challenge, and support every student, and so forth. And it tells you here, again, suggestions on the modules of taxes to use for this type of course. Or if you're teaching students in economics, again, there are modules about that basically talk about matters that pertain to economics, marketing and the economic system, what is tax and why do we tax it, taxes in a market economy, and so forth. There's another section if you're talking about functions of government. It talks about different themes as your role as a taxpayer, why pay taxes, and so on. And there's another module or another section in Pennsylvania standards if you're teaching family and consumer sciences. And again, we're talking about understanding IRS and lessons and methods of following. Okay, so we kind of looked at that part of the toolbar. There are downloads on the site, and we had some issues with this earlier, and for some reason it doesn't seem to be working too well today. Here it is. Gave me heart failure earlier program. It wouldn't download. But when you do the downloads, it shows you there are two different areas of taxes, the hows and the whys. And I personally think it's better to teach the whys of taxes first. And then, of course, once you know why you're doing it, then it's better to go and show you how to do it. But for some reason, it's in a reverse layout on this site. And here again, it's probably 6 of one, half a dozen the other. But I think, to me, it makes more sense to explain, to teach people why you're going to do taxes rather than how to do it first. But every section has modules. Like the first module, I'm going to skip down to the whys because I keep saying whys. Your role as a taxpayer, and there is a slideshow there. And because I'm using a Mac, this might look like a rolling thing, but it talks about themes, your role as a taxpayer. And there was a very famous guy named Oliver Wendell Holmes says taxes are what we pay for civilized society. And there's another slide that shows taxes fund public goods and services, all the different types of things. And some of the things I was talking about in the PowerPoint, your school bus and public, which is under public education, defense, your state and local police. And even when students want to go on to college, the federal government runs a lot of subsidized school loans. It also, on another slide, talks about early taxes. Way back in ancient Egypt, there were taxes on people that had slaves, on cooking oil. In ancient Rome, there were sales taxes, believe that or not. They had taxes on imports and exports. In the 1700s, the Russians had a tax on beards, and so forth. The next slide talks about the power to collect taxes. Again, the American Revolution caused a lot of debt, so it was necessary to pay the debt, and in order to do that, Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution granted Congress the power to tax citizens. Then another slide gives you a breakdown of the federal dollar, where it comes from. Personal taxes, 30%, borrowing to cover deficits are 36%, and so on. So this is where the dollar is broken down for the federal budget. And the next slide shows you where the money's going. Social Security, Medicare, and retirements, 37%, defense, 24%, and so forth. And then there's a good lesson how taxes evolve. We probably hearing a lot about elections lately. We just had elections for senators and representatives, and it seems like, there was a lot of talk about elections, and students may want to know how taxes evolve. And all of the taxes start in the House Ways and Means Committee, and they put together a bill that goes to the full House, and if they vote on it, it goes to the Senate Finance Committee, and if they work on it, it goes to the full Senate. And usually you have a House bill and a Senate bill, so that means they have to get together in a joint conference committee, and they generally end up with a compromise bill. And one of two things happens. They send it to the president, he signs the bill, the tax law is enacted. If he vetoes the bill, it could die, or it could be overridden by Congress. So that gives you kind of a flow chart of how taxes evolve. And again, we mentioned earlier, voluntary compliance. Every person's responsible for filing their own return. And of course, we mentioned also about tax avoidance versus evasion. Evasion is failure to pay. Avoidance, sometimes there are legal ways to decrease your tax bill. You maybe further on down the line, as you study taxes, we can learn about tax credits, savings for education, and things like that. So there are ways, legal ways, to avoid paying a large tax bill, basically by decreasing your tax bill, and that's not illegal. And then we also mentioned that taxpayers have rights. Their return information is private, and they always have the right to appeal any IRS decision. And this famous looking fellow down here had a quote. He said, income tax law is a lot of bunk. The government can't collect legal taxes from illegal money. And that guy's name was Al Capone. We know he went to jail for not paying his taxes. And so that's an example of the types of slideshows that are contained in here. And they also list, like, why pay taxes. There's a teacher lesson plan. And they're pretty extensive. So in other words, somebody's done all the work for you if you want to use this course. Theme 1, your role as a taxpayer, why pay taxes. Time frame, you can do this in 1 to 4 periods. You know, different curriculum areas you would put this apply to. Purpose, objectives, materials. There are PDF prints of worksheets and so on, and a lot of background information. There are key terms about such as public goods and services, how to open the lesson, how to develop a lesson, and there are also online activities for students and classroom activities that you can do. So the lesson plans have been pretty much worked out for you. And there are also some information sheets contained for each lesson. This particular one just talks about taxes as a way to shift resources. We said earlier, you know, the government needs resources that come from, you know, business and households. So you kind of see the interaction, you know, how everybody pays their tax to function the government. There's also another information sheet here. Again, it's just showing you the breakdown of the dollar collected, you know, where the money comes from and where it goes. And like I say, these are good resources for you to have to use in the classes. There are worksheets which are kind of like quizzes. They talk about key terms, but there's an activity here where you can list 9 different items such as interest payments, welfare payments, and put them in the correct column here. There's another activity here, kind of a fill in the blanks type thing, and a little essay type thing. And of course, they've made it easy for you, the teacher, because along with every worksheet, there's a worksheet solution that's going to show you the answers to all the things we talked about, where these 9 things go, what goes in the blanks here, and a little bit about the essay question. Of course, they're telling you answers will vary, but. So it's been a very well planned out format for use in the classroom. Again, there are assessments, and again, assessments are just sort of like quizzes. This one has like 3 parts to it. And with every assessment, again, there is an assessment solution. So it tells you exactly, you know, what the desired answers are for it. Going back to this grouping, there are themes listed for each one of these areas. If we go back up to the House of Taxes, Module 1, taxes and withholdings, wage and tip income, and so on and so forth. And when you get to the whys of taxes, they actually have themes. Your role as a taxpayer, and there's lesson 1, 2, 3, 4, five, well, there's four on it. Okay, the second theme talks about taxes in U.S. history. And again, there are lesson plans, information sheets, worksheets, and in this particular area of taxes in history, there are 6 lessons. Then theme 3 talks about fairness of taxes, and there are 5 lessons there. They talk about how to measure fairness, regressive taxes, progressive taxes, proportional taxes, how taxes affect us. The fourth theme talks about what is taxed and why are we taxing it. They talk about federal, state, and local taxes, taxes in a market economy, income tax facts, direct and indirect taxes. We may have heard those terms. The fifth theme talks about the impact of taxes, how taxes influence behavior, politics of taxation, and this is my favorite one, theme 6, understanding the IRS. The IRS yesterday and today, your first job, and methods of filing taxes, which we kind of touched on. Okay, if we go back then to the top, looking at the toolbar at the top, after we look at all these things, there is a help feature, and the help feature just kind of describes what's on this particular toolbar, what each tab does. The next one is kind of neat, a glossary. Going through all of these lessons, you're going to hear a lot of different terminology like bonus, commission, so forth. This goes from A to Z, and it's a complete glossary of tax type issues and terms. So if you hear something and your student doesn't know what it is, or the teacher may not be totally familiar with it, you can go right to the glossary. There are links also on this website that'll take you to different areas. Module 13, looking at filing taxes electronically and so forth. There are links for the whys of taxes, why pay taxes. It actually lists all the federal agencies, and that's a big list, let me tell you. And there are links for how taxes evolve, talk about the Duck Stamp Act, how to find your representatives, and so on. A lot of great links contained on there. Then there's also a complete site map, which breaks it down, and if you notice, the teacher site and the student site are almost identical to each other. They talk about the same material, but from a teacher's perspective or from a student perspective. Another neat thing to do is when you're pretty well along with this, you may want to use these like bonus questions. There's a tab called Tax Trivia, and there are a lot of questions in there, and you can see like if somebody was really digging into this, like what is the origin of the word tariff? How much do you think the UK's color TV licensing fee is in US dollars? And you might say, what's it doing in a IRS website? I'm not exactly sure. I haven't read that module, but there's some interesting trivia there. The last little link here talks about VITA E3. And VITA E3 is something that's fairly new, and it's not well developed, but if you are going to be taking this material to your students, you may want to pioneer it in Pennsylvania. In the earlier class, someone asked a question, is there a school in Pennsylvania that is doing this E3 program? And to my knowledge, I don't know of any. Okay, what E3 is, the E stands for E-File, Education, and Volunteer Experience. And basically what they're looking for is to partner high school students with an established VITA site. I had mentioned also earlier, a good site to partner might be a site that is being run by a university or a college, where a lot of the colleges have VITA sites run by their accounting departments, and they can take on your high school students and help have them participate in this process. If the student wants to get certified, they can actually complete tax returns under someone else's supervision. So we don't expect high school students to really step up and organize a big campaign, advertise it and have computers and train volunteers, but this is an experience for a high school student to actually take a little step further and actually participate in this tax filing process. At the bottom of this slide, they talk about what one high school has done. And this is like a case history of A.J. Moore Academy in Waco, Texas, where they've actually partnered with Baylor University accounting staff. And together they've managed to generate almost $11 million in tax refunds in the past few years. So this is something that's relatively new. It's not totally foreign to the tax community. However, it doesn't seem like Pennsylvania schools have adopted this method yet. So, this could be some type of public service type thing your students may want to get involved in. Also at the bottom of every slide, every section, there is a user survey link, and it'll take you to another site off of the IRS site, and I'm not going to take you there, but it's always good to provide feedback on what your experiences are. And as I said earlier, every December they make certain revisions and updates, so you may see something in there and say, well, boy, this would be a little smoother if it was done this way. And that's the reason for the feedback, the user survey, and that's the reason it's updated every year in December. If we go back, and remember I talked earlier, we concentrated pretty much on whys of taxes. Then once students understand all about why taxes are a necessity and so on and so forth, then we can go to the mechanics of actually doing lessons about tax items like payroll taxes and federal income withholding. And of course, besides your federal income tax, as I said earlier, state income tax, it's a flat tax in Pennsylvania, 3.07 is taken out. You also pay taxes for Social Security and Medicare, and for the most part, the local taxes are also taken out of your students' paychecks. So these modules about withholding and so forth help them to understand all this process. If you look at the student lesson on this, here again now, when we clicked on student lesson, you notice it turned yellow, which means it's now on the student side, and there's kind of like a skill check here for them to follow. There is also a tax tutorial about payroll taxes and federal withholding, several different slides on this, learning about payroll taxes, Social Security and Medicare taxes, withholding, and so on and so forth. So there are like little lessons embedded within the lessons, these little tutorial things. There are also some simulation exercises. Again, we talked about when the student gets his first job, one of the first things he's going to have to do is complete a W-4 form. And there is a 7 slide tutorial on just exactly what is going to occur on that form. So you may have students that have already completed these forms and are working, or you may have students that haven't got their first job yet, but it's a good exercise to give them a heads up that's their very first exposure to a tax form is before they even made a dime. There's also assessments in here. Again, the assessments are basically like quizzes, and there are different parts. And this one talks about, you can actually look at the W-4 form and kind of like fill in the blanks, answer questions based on that W-4 form. And of course, every assessment will have an answer key to it also. There are also fact sheets. And again, most of this fact sheet, again, they really do a lot with the W-4 in the earlier lessons. And again, we have teacher lesson plans. If we go back to the teacher side, and we're in the House of Taxes, your lesson plans are part of it. So a lot of the work has been done for you. All you have to, the plans are made. All you have to do is follow through each lesson and how to develop the lessons, how to conclude them, and so forth. And a lot of the work has been done for you to make this a doable plan. And of course, they have tax forms. And again, on this particular module, it's just going to bring up the W-4. But this one that it brings up this time is the complete form with a little bit of a worksheet. It's actually a 2-page form. This is the bottom part here is the part that gets cut off and given to the employers, but you do a little bit of homework up here and a little bit of calculating down here. So that's a fun exercise for a student to actually work with that W-4 form. And you could, as teachers, you could make up some jobs, say, hey, you're going to work at Target, and your name, put in your name, your address, and work through that W-4 form and help them fill out that form before they actually apply for a job. Again, looking at the modules, there are modules for all these different exercises. And again, on the student side, it pretty much complements the teacher side, but the difference is it's geared from a student's perspective. Anybody have any questions?
That was great, Regis. If you have any questions, you can type them into the question area. I know we had several questions asked in the afternoon session, and Regis, you were able to interject those answers. So I think we got a lot of those answered. If anybody has any questions, you can continue to post those. I will be on the lookout for those and see if we can answer them. But Regis, thank you so much. We appreciate you sharing the details on the Understanding website, Understanding Taxes website, I should say, and making everybody aware of it. So thank you again. Oh, we did get a question. Let's see here. We've got one question here coming, Regis, if you're still there. We have a question from Kathy Joe saying, is this similar to the Understanding Taxes that used to be mailed in the 1980s? I remember I think Kathy Joe, there used to be a big binder, and I think even some VCR tapes back in the day. Regis, I don't know if you've been with IRS long enough to remember those.
Yeah, I've been around for 13 years, and I remember when they had the books and manuals and so forth. Yeah, it's basically the same principle. They've gotten away from, all the books and, the tapes and things. We're now in the electronic world and, with the electronic learning. And of course, we promote electronic filing of taxes. And I know all the schools teach, using computers and so forth. They've made it a lot. Uh, they've basically brought it up, into the current technology, we could say, rather than using books. Uh, the nice thing about the electronic media, when there are changes or updates, it's just a matter of going in and make changes. When you change a book, you have to write the book. You got to send it to the publisher. You wait a month, the books go out, and obviously there's a matter of cost. It costs a lot of money to print those books and to ship them around, and so the government has gone and embraced the electronic learning uh, of this function, understanding taxes. And I think it's a lot better to use and apply than working with books and so forth. But the old program was great. Obviously, we have somebody who's must have been around a few years that remembers those. But this is pretty much the same principle, only in an electronic version now.
And then we have two questions here that are pretty similar, Regis, and about whether or not there's anything that would prevent the students from getting on the teacher side and accessing those. And to my knowledge, there isn't. There's not a password protected back end
No,
on
it's
this.
not password protected. No. Um, that's a good question. I don't know why. You would, maybe it would be better to have them locked out of the teacher, being that it has, with all the assessment quizzes, they have the answer key following it. But it hasn't been set up that way now.
So perhaps with that user feedback, we can have some of our participants maybe provide that as feedback. And you never know. I know that lots of the government agencies are very responsive to the feedback that they get from teachers. We also had a teacher this afternoon ask about whether or not there was a way that a simulation sort of that students could basically do a fake electronic filing online to get an idea of what that's like. So any ideas that any of our participants have, I would encourage you to you can send those probably to Regis and he can pass those on to the folks at the national level that handle that, and certainly encourage you to use that user feedback section. So any other questions? I don't see any here that are new ones coming in. But thank you again, Regis. We really appreciate you joining us this evening and sharing this great resource. And it's great to have somebody from Pennsylvania here, and certainly for anybody that's interested in thinking about the VITA programs, I encourage you to get in touch with Regis as well, and he can put you in touch with, if it's not him, since he deals with the western part of the state, he can put you in touch with the folks that would be in your local area. So thanks again, Regis, and we appreciate your participation.
You're welcome.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to keep going here and to proceed with our with the rest of our presentation on the webinar. And I will be talking about first our earning income module of our new model personal finance curriculum, as well as our new model personal finance high skill course. And I have some exciting news to share about that as we move forward here this evening. First, some of you who were on last month will be aware that we have been working on this pre-K to 12 model financial education curriculum. The good news that I have to share is that just as of this week. It is now live. The vast majority of it is live and on the standards aligned system. So at the end of what we talk about here, I'm going to tell you how to get to it and share with you some additional details. The only thing that's not there are the high school modules. We are waiting for a fix to the template to get done. I thought it was going to be live next week, but I got the email right before our webinars this afternoon that that has now been fixed. So I will be getting to work on uploading all of the high school course modules and get those uploaded and formatted as soon as I possibly can. By absolute drop dead deadline is that those will be up and ready by the SAS Institute on the 8th of December. But I'm hoping to get those done before Thanksgiving and possibly even sometime next week. So anyhow, I'm very excited about that. I know many of you have been looking forward to these being available. So what do we do with the development of this? Well, we identified long-term transfer goals, what students should be able to take their information and what they're getting in school and how they should be able to apply it down the road. And we divided all of the content in personal finance into 6 big ideas, six big buckets. And you'll see information about that both in the in all grade levels as well as then in the high school module. The big ideas don't change, nor do the essential questions in some cases. We try to write these so that they really could be scaled to every grade level in almost all cases. So tonight we're looking specifically at earning. Earning capabilities over a lifetime are maximized by career planning, education, and job choices. So the choices that you make are going to impact how much money you make. Simple as that. You'll notice that there's a theme. There's a couple of themes, but the most predominant theme that runs through all of these of these big ideas and essential questions, and something that we chose not to have as a separate idea or a separate essential question necessarily, but it all has to do with the notion that there's choices. And so you see in lots of the different big ideas and the associated essential questions this notion of choice. You know, in earning, it has to do with job choices. In borrowing, it's the choice about borrowing, and that you have choices, and that there's a process by which people make informed decisions. And that's a very key piece that follows through all of these threads, and that we hope that certainly when you're teaching personal finance, that you're embedding the process of becoming good decision makers with students, weighing the pros and cons, looking at opportunity costs, what have you, as students make choices. So as I mentioned, we have the 6 big ideas. I've said this before, and I'll continue to say it. There's lots of different ways that you could slice this pie, and we just had to sort of put a stake in the ground and say this is the way that we're going to do it. The 6 big ideas or modules at the high school level do align with the newly revised version of the high school financial planning program. Again, lots of ways to slice and dice this. This is the one that we just decided to go with it, that we felt was going to make the most sense for what we were trying to accomplish. Certainly, you might have modules or units or other things in your programs that you're doing that may be in direct alignment. You may say, hey, I don't even need to do earning because that is dealt with in this whole separate careers course. And so I don't even need to worry about that. I just focus on the other parts. Every school is going to be different. Every set of students is going to be different. But what we wanted to do was just give everybody a starting point, someplace to jump off from and modify to your own liking. Those of you who have worked with me before might be familiar with the CASE method. It's one that I learned in my very first professional development program as a teacher. It stands for copy and steal everything. So, copy this, borrow from it, share it with other people, make it your own, but it's a good way to get started. So what does this look like under the earning income big idea and within that module at the high school level? Again, here's the big idea that I mentioned earlier, having to do with choices and job choices and such that will impact what you're able to make in terms of earning an income over the course of a lifetime. The essential questions, what are the factors that impact a person's earning potential? How do people develop a career plan? What factors do people consider when accepting a job? You have to make some choices, and if you're lucky enough to have more than one, or if you decide, hey, I need to turn this one down and wait for something better to come along. What determines personal tax liability and take-home pay? I'd argue that pretty much all four of these, with the exception of the last one, can very easily be done in a more elementary manner at the elementary school level. As early, I say that earning income really should be taught from the very beginning in kindergarten and first grade, when students are starting to talk about community helpers. There are postmen and police officers and nurses and dentists and doctors and teachers and everything else that provide services in our community, but they're also there because they earn a living by doing that. And recognizing that as a piece and a component can certainly be done as early as the very early elementary grades. In this module, students are going to learn about education and training requirements for various careers, the process of gaining employment, and compensation and taxes. Students develop a career plan through research and reflection. We have a list of objectives for each of the modules. This is just an overview of the first two. So the first one here says that they'll be able to analyze career opportunities and income potential tied to one's interests, aptitudes, and desired standard of living, including entrepreneurship. And then we list the standards that apply to that. So we've tried to make this very clear. Here's an objective, and here are standards from, in this case, economics and business, computer information technology, and career education and work. Some of them are also tied to family and consumer science. We have all sorts of different standards that roll into this. And then here are the other objectives. So which standards do we correlate to? We correlated to the ones I mentioned before: Econ, FCS, Career Education and Work, as well as the BCIT, Business Computer Information Technology. And all of these are listed then and linked to where they live on SAS in the what you'll see online eventually. And then you'll note that these standards are what we call the focus standards. The way that I try and differentiate between those is that the focus standards are the standards that we're trying to teach to mastery. So these are the things that we want them to really be able to do by the time they're done. And then these important standards are ones that are sort of related. They're not going to necessarily be able to be taught to mastery, and that's not our goal, is to teach these to mastery. But there's certainly things that we can connect to and make connections with. This is a piece that I think is a sort of unique to what we've done here, are the misconceptions and proper conceptions. So what are the things that kids come into school or come into your classroom thinking about earning money, and that aren't necessarily true, and what's the real truth? So we've identified 5 here. The fifth one is something sort of Regis talked about earlier, that sometimes students are going to view taxes as bad and serving little purpose. Why do I have to pay all this money? And the proper conception is that they are necessary for public services and infrastructure. On the flip side, kids might think, well, so long as I'm a hard worker, I'll make money. What else matters? Well, there's a lot of things that matter. You might be the smartest kid in the world at one specific thing, and if there's no demand for that job, you're not going to get one. And so, looking at all the things that factor into those, that there's more than just your skills and your grades and your work ethic. Number 2, credit score, irresponsible content on social media, attendance record, all of those can affect your employability. So lots of different things to consider here, and making sure that students correct their misconceptions and turn those into proper conceptions. The major concepts, there's 4 of them in earning income: career plan, earning income, net pay, and taxes. And then we have a series of competencies, things that students should be able to do when they're done. Here's the vocabulary that we have in this module, or under this big idea. The assessments then are all tied to the objectives and correlated to standards. Now, we have drawn heavily from these 3 providers throughout the entirety of our model curriculum: the National Endowment for Financial Education's High School Financial Planning Program, Take Charge Today, which used to be FIFI, or the Family Economics and Financial Education Program, and finally Visa's Practical Money Skills for Life. So here's an example of one of the assessment items. This is our objective here in bold, followed by the correlating standards, and then what our actual assessment item is for this, which is that knowledge assessment from NEFI's third module. And we do note that all of the things that live on the NEFI site, as well as the Take Charge Today site, both do require a teacher login. Those are the sites, because of that, because they're free, they're good quality content, and they live behind a firewall, or not a firewall necessarily, but they live behind a password protected site. That those are some of the ones that we went with for our assessments and a lot of our elements of instruction. So speaking of that elements of instruction, they're tied to the objectives again, so you don't have to guess. It's not just a list of things that you should do and you have to guess which objective they go to. They're again correlated to the standards, and they draw from, in the case of earning income, the three sources we talked talked about in assessments, the understanding taxes that we just spent time talking about earlier today, and then finally the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia's Keys to Financial Success program. Now the Keys program is the only sort of outlier in this, in that in order to get the entire program, traditionally teachers need to go and participate in the week-long training program that's offered by the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia. If you don't, there are ways to get that from the Federal Reserve Bank, but you will likely have to end up paying for a couple of the resources that they draw on. It's not a substantial charge. You can get everything that you need for less than $100, but because it's not free, we just want to make sure that folks are aware of that. And so here's what one of those objectives looks like, with some suggested strategies and then some specific lesson plans connected to it. So here's that same objective listed with the standards again, and we have 5 different suggestions of things that you can do with that, and then some lesson plans that would help you to achieve those. Some of these lesson plans are duplicitous in the kind of content they have. Everybody's got a lesson on some of these different topics. We're not saying what's the best of the best, because that's going to vary depending on what you want to use. But these are the ones that we suggest that you look at. And I can tell you that you can do all of these online. I have also gone through the process now of printing out every single one of these lesson plans. I have them in a series of 6 3-ring binders, one for each of the modules. I'm just one of those still likes to see things in hard copy and put things side by side. So lots of ways that you can go about moving forward and trying to figure out what's going to work best for you. And then there's interdisciplinary connections, and this is, I would have to say, are the sections in each of the modules that probably continue to need the most work. These are going to be living and breathing documents. So as you're able to access the modules and you have suggestions and say, hey, this is something that I've done to make connections with math, or here's a writing prompt that I've given to students that helps them prepare for for their standardized assessments and those kinds of things that tie to that. So something definitely to consider with that, and we'd love your feedback, not just in that area but in all of them, as you get a chance to start digging in and working with these tools. The additional resources section, we are pulling from other resources. Some of our modules we pull from more than this list, but in this module right now we're drawing attention to resources with EverFi, Foolproof, Money Skill, and Bonsai. If you're not familiar with those programs, EverFi, Foolproof, and Bonsai have all been featured on past webinars, so you can go back and look for those webinars and download those or watch those online to learn more about their programs. Money Skill is not one that we have featured yet, but likely will in the next school year. I also would be remiss if I didn't talk about and thank our development team. This is the group of teachers that worked on our high school model curriculum, and have just been a great group of teachers to work with. I'm going to stop here and just ask if there's any questions about the content of any of the model curriculum from anybody. Any questions about what it includes, how you might use it, anything along those lines. We have a quieter group than we did in the afternoon. Feel free to continue. I'm going to show you next where you'll be able to find it online and show you where you can gain access to this. All right, so I should have a prize for the first person who can find the typo and what's wrong on this screenshot. Feel free to note that in your questions. Maybe we'll find some great prize for you to get. This is right now what's live on SAS. Like I said, it just went live this week, and I saw the typo as soon as I logged on, so we need to get that fixed. But if you go onto the main page of SAS and go to the Curriculum Framework tab, and then your fifth option over on the right says Personal Finance Model Curriculum. And that's where you're going to find this. Now, what needs to be fixed is over here where it says Library Model Curriculum. They used the template from the library one when they built this, and it still says that should get fixed here shortly. But the links, when you click on these on the live website, will take you to the PDFs of all of those documents. And if we have time here at the end, I'll show you the live version of that website. And then where do you find the rest of it? So similar to the questions that were asked earlier about the understanding taxes, we don't like to give kids the keys to the kingdom, the layout of the land ahead of time. So, the real meat of everything is going to be living in the teacher tools section. And so to get to that, first you need to log in. If you don't have a PDE SAS login, you'll need to get one of those. Log in there at the top right-hand side, and then you're going to click Teacher Tools. This little screen here will show up, and you're going to click the Curriculum Mapping section of this. There's lots of stuff on the back end of SAS. If you've never been on this section, I encourage you to go here. There's a lot of different additional resources that you can't get to from the front end of the section of the website. And then once you're in curriculum mapping, you will see a variety of different options. Pennsylvania Standards Instructional Frameworks in English Language Arts and Math, and then right there, side by side with ELA and Math is Personal Finance. I have to say, I never thought I'd see the day where we were getting equal billing, but I think that's just a testament to the fact that PDE is very committed to providing resources to schools and teachers on personal finance. And they're very pleased with what we've put together here. So on the live site, all of these links down here at the bottom for the long-term transfer goals, the standards, the curriculum map components, the grade band summaries, grade level summaries, and the modules by grade level are all things that you can click on. These grade band summaries and grade level summaries are really great for use at the elementary and middle school levels, where it talks about and sort of breaks down what can be done, pre-K to second grade, for example, but then also, well, how would you build that? What would you do in pre-kindergarten, then first grade, then second grade? Same thing for grades 3 through 5, 6 through 8. The 9 through 12 is all lumped together and is basically an overview of the model course that we're looking at. And then down here at the bottom where it says there were no curriculum maps found, this is where you're going to check back in the next week or two for where the high school modules are going to be as soon as I get those up. And then later, as we continue to develop pre-K to 8 materials focusing on integration, you should also be finding some of those there as well. So any other questions about where you get to this? Any thoughts from anybody? I did have a teacher after the last webinar asking us, saying that they're right now in the very middle of curriculum development, and they're trying to get something now. I was able to send them some draft versions that they can use. So if you can't wait, need something right away, don't hesitate to let me know. All right, so I mentioned that these need to be live in time for the SAS Institute. That's a Standards Aligned System Institute. If you're not familiar with this conference coming up, it's a great program being held in December in Hershey at the Hershey Lodge. Registration is open right now. I think we're almost close to 1,000 teachers and principals and superintendents that are planning to attend. There's a whole host of different breakout sessions. I will be presenting on Monday along with 2 high school teachers, one family consumer sciences, one and from the business department at 2 different high schools. Both were involved in our team. And then we have a first grade teacher and a reading specialist from an elementary school that are going to be talking about the integration and the elementary middle grade levels. So it should be a good session, and hopefully we'll see some of you at that. But there is still time um, to do that. We did have somebody ask about getting a PDE SAS login. If you go to the pdesas.org website and click to log in, if you don't currently have a login ID, then you can request one and get one from there. You just have to provide your contact information. If you have a current PPID, your professional identification for Act 48, then you can enter that, and that gets entered into the system as well. All right, the next piece that I wanted to cover, we're going to change gears a little bit here and talk about the H&R Block Budget Challenge. Now, I thought of this afterwards. I didn't necessarily mean to put the IRS folks here on the program with H&R Block for any purpose, except the H&R Block is obviously most well known for doing taxes. But the reason I'm focusing on them in this webinar and wanted to make you aware of this as a resource is that they have sponsored this program called the Budget Challenge, which has been around for a little while and has always had a cost attached to it for teachers to register students. But thanks to a very generous sponsorship from H&R Block, their Budget Challenge is being offered free of charge to most schools and high schools this year. So I wanted to show you a little bit of that and make you aware of it. So if you have registered and or are using this program, put something there in the questions sections that so we can be made aware of that. I have not yet met a teacher who is using it. I would love to know and get feedback from anyone that chooses to do so. The program is sort of like a game in which there's a simulation of paying bills, managing expenses, saving money, investing in retirement, and paying taxes. In order to get a good score, students want to maximize their 401k savings, pay their bills on time, answer questions correctly, and avoid these various different types of fees. And next, I'm going to switch over to the web and show you a video about how to play the challenge. The direct link is here on the PowerPoint slides, which you will be getting either later tonight or tomorrow.
Welcome to Budget Challenge. I'm Dave Buten.
I'm Palmyra Buten. We are the co-founders of Budget Challenge. Now that your H&R Block Budget Challenge simulation is started, we want to show you some of the changes that take place to your student account when the program begins and how to do common tasks in the system. Once the simulation is launched, you will notice that your student account has gained additional views. The Student Home tab gets pages for the leaderboard, bank, employer, and 401k. There is also an additional tab for vendors, which houses a page for each of the faux vendors in the simulation.
To start off, students receive an initial deposit into their checking account and an initial deposit into their 401k that provides the starting score. From there on, the leaderboard score is updated nightly. Students can gain insight into the transactions that have impacted their score by clicking on the view button next to their name on the leaderboard. Scores are increased by 1 point per dollar saved into the 401k, including the employer match and any interest earned. Scores are reduced by 1 point per dollar for any fees incurred. There's an additional 150-point penalty each time a bill is not paid on time. The scoring formula has been designed to reward fiscally responsible behaviors for the short and long term.
There are weekly opportunities for students to earn extra points on their score by taking quizzes or surveys. These are found on the main student homepage just above the leaderboard. To receive full credit on surveys, please answer all questions, including open-ended questions. Quizzes only award points for each correct response.
As the simulation progresses, you will receive courtesy email notifications whenever a new bill is issued. Each faux vendor has its own page that houses the account activity and FAQ. To view a bill, simply go to the specific vendor page and click View to display the details of the charges, the total amount due, and the due date.
To pay a bill, go to the bank page, verify your available balance, and issue a check on the online bill pay section. Select the vendor you wish to pay. Enter the amount and select the delivery date for the check. The bank guarantees your check will process on the delivery date selected. But there is a catch. There is a 2-day processing window built into the game. Today's date and tomorrow's date are blocked out. Sundays and federal holidays are also blocked out. As long as you can select a date on the calendar, that is the date the funds will be withdrawn from your checking account and posted to the vendor. The check will appear in the pending checks queue for a limited amount of time. While in the pending queue, you may review the check amount, payee, and delivery date. If you see a mistake, you must delete the check and start a new one.
In addition to paying bills and saving into their 401k, participants can practice their negotiation skills by submitting any customer service inquiry directly to the faux vendors. Teachers are copied on all responses to give teachers visibility into the questions asked and responses provided.
Biweekly paychecks can be viewed by going to the Student Home tab, selecting the employer page, and clicking on the View hyperlink next to the paycheck you wish to see. The breakdown of taxes, withholdings, 401k, and net pay is visible.
Changes to the 401k contribution are allowed during the simulation as long as the request is received at least 1 day prior to the payroll run. Use the drop-down field to select the contribution percent desired and save the request. The effective date of the new contribution percent will be displayed upon submission.
The checking account can be updated in the same manner, but only for a full monthly cycle. As long as you can schedule the change request before the bank cycle day, the change will take effect for the upcoming month.
In addition to the leaderboard score, other performance metrics like engagement score and real-world ready scores are tracked for each student. We hope you've enjoyed this demonstration of the H&R Block Budget Challenge program.
So I saw that Kathy Jo said that her students are currently using the program in their in her, let's see, the dollars and cents program that she has, and that she says they're loving it. So that's good news. We did have one other teacher in the afternoon mention that she has enrolled her students, but that they haven't started it yet. So I'd love to hear feedback from anybody who decides to use the H&R Block Budget Challenge. I think it's a pretty neat program, and again, I'd love to hear feedback from anybody as you potentially use it. The reason we are just now featuring it in this November one, they did have 3 windows that are either already running or what have you, but the registration dates were after the October webinar that we did, so we didn't see any point in mentioning it then. But there's plenty of time for you to get on and register for the ones that are going to take place in the new year. So you can take a look and see which of those windows might work best for your students and enroll them accordingly. There is the website there at the bottom of these slides. And again, the slides will be posted for you to look at after the webinar. There are free apps for the challenge, so if you are in a classroom that has access to iPads or Android devices, or your students have those on there, or you have a bring your own device policy, or they can access them at home, that's something that you might want to take a look at and consider. There are also some free lesson plans and activities to accompany the challenge and things that you can do with your students. The challenge is part of an overall financial education initiative by H&R Block. They put a lot of funding into supporting this program, as well as others. And I might mention that there are certainly some prizes and scholarships and grants that are also associated with this. And so you might want to take a look at that as well. And we just have a few minutes left, but I wanted to just show you this one video that they've done about what if kids had all the money. And the reason I like this is I just think it is incredibly well done. And I will just show you the first portion of it. But I could see using this at a back to school night, or possibly even as a writing prompt with your students. So let me just play a portion of this for you. I went ahead and let you see the whole thing. I just think that's incredibly well done, and I think it would be interesting to maybe show it to students and maybe see what they could do. Can they come up with their own version, and or write about what could be done? What would happen if kids have all the money, or when kids do have all the money down the road? We did have a question about the budget simulation or budget challenge. Can it be done in teams or only individually? One of the challenges, and I'd be curious to see how folks are doing with this in the classroom, again, because this is really new. I haven't gotten a chance to talk to anybody that's using it yet, but each student needs to have an email address because they get the stuff sent to them that way. So I can envision a way that you would be able to just set it up so that you do it with teams, but that's something that you definitely want to look at, and that may be addressed, Joan, in the Q&A if you go onto their website, or certainly I'm sure there's a way to contact them and ask them that as well. All right, so just a couple of other things to mention to everybody here. If you weren't on the last webinar, I did mention that the House Education Committee held a financial literacy hearing. You can still go on and download and watch that hearing. We are anticipating that there's going to be quite a bit of legislation around this issue in the next session. I know for a fact that Representative Rosemary Brown is working on a bill with Dan Truitt that will likely be introduced in January that would require every school to make personal finance a graduation requirement of some type. So something to be on the lookout for. Then we have ways to get in touch with us. Facebook, Pinterest, Twitter. We'd always love to be connecting with everyone. And then certainly we'd love for everybody to be signing up and receiving our e-blasts. We are having more and more problems with filters, even just emails that I try to send, even a response to teacher emails are having a hard time getting through nowadays. And I understand that schools have to protect their email systems, but if you're having problems or you're not getting our emails, I'd encourage you to have some conversations with the IT folks at your district. Try and add my email address to their safe sender list, both the Hilary at makingsensepa.org and the Hilary at hilaryhunt.com would be really helpful to make sure that you're getting everything from us. Same with, I know we're having some teachers that are getting they sign up for the webinar and then they're not getting the information about it. So your other option is to use a personal email address, not your school one, so that things are getting through a little bit easier. We have several upcoming webinars still in this school year, 4 more after the new year, January, February, March, and April. In January, I'm really excited. We have Judge Mary France joining us. Those of you who attended our Governor's Institutes from years past may remember Judge France as the bankruptcy judge from the Harrisburg District Federal Court there. She's a fantastic advocate for financial education, and she'll be sharing some information with us on that webinar. We also have somebody from the national offices with Wells Fargo and hands-on banking joining us for that session. In February, we have Chris Rocky with the PNC Bank, as well as Tricia Heisey from Belco Community Credit Union joining us to talk about the role that financial services play. We'll be looking at the risk management section of the model curriculum and featuring resources from Next Generation in March. And then in April, we'd be doing things with saving and investing. So I hope that you mark your calendars. You can certainly get registered for all of those already, and to be ready to join us in each of those in the new year. We're also looking to add an additional daytime webinar about the model curriculum once everything is up and online, that we'll be promoting and encouraging, in particular, administrators to join. So look for information once we get that one scheduled. I will continue to stay on and take questions from anybody that has them. I do see that we have one here to answer, but I'm cognizant that we're running against our time limit. And just want to thank everybody for participating today. Again, we appreciate your participation. This program is being recorded and will be online, as are all of our previous webinars. So any of them that you might have missed that you want to go back and catch up on, I'd encourage you to go and check those out at the makingsensepa.org website.